Hi, so today I'd like to talk about the new iPhones and what happens if you replace the screen with a non-original screen and then try to update the operating system. The screen stops working. Now, what's particularly interesting about this is that you could change the screen of the phone with a non-original screen and it will still work. It's only once you decide to update the software of the phone that it will not allow the screen to work anymore if you've installed a non-original screen. And it does so with no warning to the user, which is pretty terrible. This is something that is so far unique to Apple. There are no other phone companies that I know of at this time where if you install a knockoff screen, it will work, but then the operating system will detect that you've installed a knockoff screen with a later version and just out of spite say, no phone for you. This is not something that's particularly new with Apple. If you go back to the iPhone 6 and Error 53, which I've done videos about on this channel, you'll see that they tied the home button to the CPU of the phone. And what would happen is that the Touch ID feature, where you could unlock the phone or you could unlock your banking app and all this type of stuff, wouldn't work if you swapped the home button with a new home button. And fair enough, I'm not going to argue about that. But what I would argue about is that it's unfair to create a system where if you change your home button, the phone will just magically brick itself if you decide to update the software without notifying you. So with the iPhone 6, you could replace its home button with a new home button on your own, and the phone would still work. You'd just be missing out on the fingerprint sensor. But if you went to update the software on that phone without notifying you, you would get Error 53, your data would be stuck inside the phone, and you wouldn't be able to restore it until Apple released a fix that undid this. Now, when it came to the iPhone 6, we could at least have made the argument here, Apple weren't doing that to be mean, this was just being done for security reasons. That's not a particularly great argument, because when it comes to the iPhone 6, you could use the phone for 6 to 8 months with the knockoff home button, and it would still work. It would just stop working at the moment of updating it. So if it was an issue of security, which it isn't, but if it was an issue of security, that's one of those issues where if it was really done for security reasons, the phone would entirely stop working the moment you put the new button in. It only stops working when you update it. But there, at the very least, there could be some sort of vague argument that it has to do with security because it's the touch sensor. It's the fingerprint sensor, right? And you use that to log into your phone. Now, with the iPhone 8, this is happening with the screen. The screen. There's not really much of a security argument to be made there, which is where the spite argument kind of moves in a little bit. Why would you set it up so that if somebody installs a non-original screen, it will work, but once you update the software, that screen will magically not work if it can't talk to the IC chip in the Flex? We're not talking about a knockoff charging circuit. We're not talking about a knockoff transmission. We're not talking about knockoff brakes. We're not talking about anything where safety is a serious concern or security is a serious concern. We're talking about the thing that spits out an image on a cell phone. Now, a lot of people may say, well, you should just get the screen replaced at the store. And honestly, I'm not even going to disagree with you a lot there. I made a video about 3 years ago saying that I think iPhone screen repair is a dying business. Back in 2007, 2009, even 2013, if you wanted your iPhone screen fixed, the Apple Store would typically swap your phone out of warranty. It would cost $299, around $300. All your data would be erased, and it was a time-consuming process. Whereas an independent service center could easily swap your screen, have you in and out like that in 20 minutes. You pay $50 to $150. It was a much better solution. Now, inside the Apple Store, they'll replace your screen for something like $120. You get a guarantee of an original screen, and they do it fairly quickly, and they do it without deleting any of your user data. And there are Apple stores all over the country. So there's less of an argument for the iPhone screen repair third-party business than there was, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago. However, there are a lot of people that live outside the range of an authorized Apple service provider. Further, many authorized Apple service providers, as well as Apple stores, if your phone looks like this instead of like this, which, yeah, it takes that much of a bend, they will not fix the phone. Thirdly, there are a lot of people who live in countries where they don't have access to an Apple authorized service provider, where in order to go to an Apple authorized service provider, they would have to pay about $1,000 for a round trip plane ticket. So for them, they don't really have the option And fourth, there are people that live in areas like New York City where if you want to get an appointment, sometimes you can get it quickly. Sometimes you'd be looking at up to a week's wait just to get an appointment to get your screen repaired. There are places around the country where there's about a 2-week long wait to get an appointment to get your screen repaired. So there's still there's good reasons that people would go to a third-party service center. They don't have one in their country. There's a 1 to 2 week long wait. The authorized service facility will refuse to fix the phone if there's even the tiniest bit of bend in it, rather than just bend the case back into place, which is what we do. And so there's a reason that people would use unauthorized parts. Now you may say, well, the only reason that these service centers are using non-original copy parts is to save money so that they can, so that they can go home to their yachts and their limousines. And how dare they? They deserve this. Well, not really, because we don't have the option to buy the original part. Unlike with companies like Samsung, where if you want to buy the original part, granted it's expensive, but if you want to buy the original part, you can just go to one of these websites and simply purchase it. With Apple, there's really no amount of money that I can spend to establish a relationship whereby I can purchase those parts from them as a third-party service provider. And I would like to remain a third-party service provider because if I were to become an authorized service provider, many of the repairs that I offer to my customers, I would no longer be able to offer to my customers. I couldn't do component-level repairs within warranty if somebody spilled liquid on something. I'd rather replace a fuse than charge somebody $1,250, but hey, that's me. So there's quite a bit to unravel there. And it's one of these things where, my microphone is bleeding. That's interesting. Didn't notice that before I started my video. Adding insult to injury with some of the newer phones, if you replace the screen, even if you transfer everything over from the old phone to the new phone, some functionality won't work anymore. So, for example, as I was saying with the iPhone 6, if you change the home button, the fingerprint sensor wouldn't work. But if while replacing the screen on an iPhone 6, you transferred the home button from the old iPhone to the new iPhone, the sensor would work fine. With the newest iPhone, if you transfer over the front camera, which allows you to log in just by looking at it, if you transfer over the front camera from the old screen to the new screen, still won't work. You would think that something like the front-facing camera would be tied to the CPU, but it's actually not. It's tied to the screen. So if you ever replace the screen on your iPhone X not using an official Apple Service Center, you will lose the functionality to open your phone, to unlock your phone by looking at it, even if you transfer over the original camera, which is just one of those things that just makes me wonder why. This is also something that's been going on with their laptops as well. They have an EDID code that is built into the screen of the MacBook Pro Retina machines, and if I want to buy that LCD panel by itself, it does not come with programming. And to this day, I still have yet to find a way to program the EDID code of a monitor over DisplayPort. The brightness control was working all the way up until the latest operating system. So if you installed Sierra for a good amount of time, the brightness control would not work if it could not read the EDID code of the display, but it would work before. So we were getting all these phone calls from people saying, my brightness control doesn't work. And we were clueless, and then we realized they were all using the same operating system. And I can't buy that screen from Apple. Apple is not going to give me a way to purchase that, so we purchase it from them from a broker in Taipei that gets them from an LG distributor that sells them to us, and they work. They're great screens. They work beautifully, but they don't have EDID codes in them, and because they don't have EDID codes in them, Apple decided with one of the latest updates, hey, let's just break brightness functionality if we can't read the EDID code of the screen, even though it worked before. So now you may be thinking to yourself, well, they have the right to do that. And, well, they do. You may be thinking to yourself, well, they have the right to make it so that if you choose to repair your device, that they could just make it not work at any given point in time with an update in the future with no real good reason. And you're right. They do have the right to do that. But you also have the right to be informed that this is what they're doing, and you have the right to choose whether or not you wish to give money to a company that does this when it comes to just something as basic as replacing your screen. And it's something that I hope you will keep in mind when it comes time for your next purchase and before you decide to buy a device that's going to cost you about $1,000 that very easily breaks if you drop it. That's it for today, and as always, I hope you learned something. Let me know what you think in the comments below, if you've had any experience with this, if you have any experience transferring these flexes, if you had any experience replacing these screens, if you've had any issues with errors, whatever it is, we'd love to know more, so please do mention whatever it is that you have to say in the comments down below. Thank you very much.